Hello and welcome to the Granite Mountain Movie Club. Today's a special edition of Movie Club. We're talking about Children of Men, the 2006 film about a future version of the world in which women are unable to have children. And we are joined today by Dr. Bennett, who has a special connection to the topic of this movie. How are you doing, Dr. Bennett?
Doing great. Great to be here.
We're also joined by Cool Fraser.
Yes, I'm cool and I'm listening.
Fraser, is it fair to say that you see yourself as a bit of a baby Diego figure in the world?
Many are familiar with my baby Fraser character, so yes, I mean, I would say that's fair.
I mean, I see a baby Bennett.
Yeah, baby Bennett is very popular, especially in this kind of natalism space.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely see you as a kind of a baby Diego, kind of in terms of your influence and your what you mean to the world. How many
people will mourn my death.
Yeah, how would you respond? Let's say you're at a nightclub in, I don't know, Argentina or something. And someone asks for an autograph. How would you respond?
Well, first of all, I would tell them that I'm listening, and then I would ask for some money, and then I would sign it, of course.
Well, unfortunately, they might try and kill you. So
yeah, true.
Which is where our movie begins. Baby Diego has been killed. But before we get more into the movie, Dr. Bennett, tell us about your connection to this topic.
Yeah, so in a couple of weeks, we're going to be in Austin, Texas at Natal Conference. You can check that out at natalism.org, NATALISM. And that's a conference focused on addressing the issue of demographic decline. And Children of Men is sort of a stylized, intensified, amplified version of problems that I think are actually very real and coming around the pike. And what's interesting about it is, in this movie, it's a medical phenomenon that happens without people's consent. But this is something that's being chosen. And what's good about that is it means that we could nose up if we wanted to. We could correct course. But so we're going to be running a conference for 2 days, December 1st and 2nd in Austin, Texas, where we bring together geneticists, demographers, founders, investors, people who care about this problem and want to build both macro level solutions, like, how do we actually reverse this sociological trend, but also who want to get their families, their communities robust to this issue. So it's going to be day one, standard conference with, speakers and panels and reception dinner. Day two is going to be workshops where we actually do some design work to build some prototype solutions, either again at the macro or micro level, to get people having babies again. And you can check it out at natalism.org.
Who's going to be there? There's a pretty big list of people that.
And it's funny because we actually had a much bigger list with more ladies on it, but literally 3 of our female guest speakers had babies in the time between their agreement to attend and the conference. So we've lost a huge fraction of our speakers, but it's going to be Roy Nationalist is going to be there. Ben Braddock's going to be there. Razib Khan, Malcolm and Simone Collins, Michael Anton, Charles Haywood. Oh gosh, now I've listed enough names that the ones that I didn't name, it's like a problem. A lot of great names. And Indian Bronson, as some of you know, he's working on a novel dating app to address sort of the screwy incentive structures around dating. And it's going to be a great time.
Okay, awesome. And tickets are still available, right?
Absolutely, and you can use offer code EXIT to get 30% off.
Oh, nice. Yeah, and you can probably even get your company to pay for it. I don't know how, but you probably could.
We have had more than one corporate funded attendee. So it's great.
Nice. Yeah, it seems pretty cool. I don't think I personally will be able to go, but I think a lot of people I know are going to be there. So it sounds like an awesome event.
Cool. Fraser's going to be there. If you want to
Yeah,
meet,
I'm going to be there. If you want to meet me in person, I'll be
Baby
there as
Fraser.
Baby Fraser.
Don't stab him. Don't stab him.
Nope.
Yeah. All right, nice. Yeah, everyone go and run, don't walk to buy your tickets for NATALCON. I've heard a bunch of NATALCON is to the point now where I see little comments about it outside of my sort of circle of people. Even kind of like I'll see like accounts on Twitter making maybe NATALCON themed jokes about it or something, which I think is good because it's like it means it's getting out there. What are some of your? I've heard a bunch of jokes. Are there any good ones? Are there any funny jokes about? A lot of people are talking about. Oh, are there going to be breeding rooms at NATALCON?
That's the general theme. Is the sort of like when it's funny because it to me it indicates this like almost prudish embarrassment with sex. Still, it's like discussing the fact that people are not having enough reproductive intercourse, guys. Like that actually is a problem. We should actually talk about it and not be embarrassed by it. But and it's funny, like I'm supposed to be the puritanical religious extremist, but some of these guys are so clearly like awkward and embarrassed about the concept when they're supposed to be the edgelords. But yeah, I mean I'd love to tell you that there have been some like really hilarious ones, but that's pretty much all it is. It's like
just variations of that joke.
Yeah, like are we going to raffle off some of the the ladies that come, and it's it's like whatever. But yeah, I mean, and it's going to be a good time. It's going to be a lot of fun.
All right, nice. And yeah, if you do have the breeding room or whatever, I'll try and sponsor it.
Brought to you by.
Yeah, the movie club breeding room, and they have to.
Every good conference has a hot chicks room. So
yeah, they have to listen to my Zodiac episode while they do it. So
oh boy.
Well, anyway, all right. Well, let's. Actually, one more thing. On NATALCON, tell your. So in the movie, there's this. My favorite part. I'll just spoil my favorite part of Children of Men. Is when he tells his boss he's taking time off to mourn baby Diego, which he obviously is
more deeply than I thought.
Yeah, he obviously doesn't care about baby Diego, but tell your boss that you're mourning baby Diego and go to NATALCON.
The consequences of demographic decline. I feel very disturbed by it. I need to take a mental health day. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's jump into the movie.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, ask a question.
I feel like this is the natalism movie, right? Are there others though that we could have covered?
Arrival.
Oh, you know which one? The X-ray sunglasses movie. What's that one?
Oh, that
They Live.
They Live.
Yeah.
Wasn't that one? That one's goofy because they make it seem like that the world and the government is when he puts on the glasses, it's like one of the
forcing them to breed or whatever.
Yeah, it's like breed. It's like
marry and reproduce.
Yeah. Yeah. What a sinister message to the government. Like
evil monsters.
I googled movies about natalism. First result is Reddit. Movies anti-natalists might like. Children of Men. Are anti-natalists watching this and being like, "Oh, this is great.
Yeah, this is my jam. I want to live."
This is what I hope for.
That's just dystopia.
So, I have a question off the bat though about this movie. And I would say I like this movie. It's it's a good watch. It's a good one, and it's very short. I didn't realize how short it was. It's like might even be under an hour and a half, slightly under. It's kind of weird for a dystopian sci-fi movie to be on the short end, but it's a good watch. I encourage, if anyone hasn't seen it, go watch it. But my main question is like, what are the motivations of the various factions? I was having a hard time with this. Like, maybe one of you can can set me straight on this.
Well, let's name them. I guess
You
we
have
got
the fascist British government,
right.
and
There's
then
the
kind of
government, and
Antifa,
they're
pro
trying to keep the
immigration.
peace.
Yeah, then there's like a pro immigration Antifa faction that's like
They're called the Fishes or something, right?
yeah, and then there's like various like religious sort of end times groups. They don't really explore those, but the two main ones, just the revolutionary type people, and then the fascist government. What do both sides like? I don't. It was a little unclear to me why both sides like care about possessing the baby that the movie hinges around.
Okay, so not sort of what are their big picture goals, but why do they both want the baby?
Yeah, both, I guess.
Well, so it seems like the subtext or what I assumed was the government's purpose in getting the baby was, number one, they would want to like vivisect and study the mom, figure out why she was able to do that, and while simultaneously covering up that she was a refugee. At least that's what the Fishes accuse the government of. They accuse the government of like, oh, they're going to give the baby to some British national so that they can cover up that it was the because they have to maintain this this blind prejudice against illegal.
Right, and they try to be like, we made this happen as the government, so trust us.
Oh, okay, so they don't want something good associated with immigrants.
Right, and also technically the government has no clue about it, right? And like it's a very small group that actually know this exists.
Yeah, I don't think the government ever does any deliberate moves toward the baby because they don't know it exists.
Right.
Everything we know about the government's motivations is what the fish say about it.
Mm-hmm. And so their motivation is just to protect this woman and the baby, but they want to get it out of Britain, right?
Well, no. So the fish are led by Julianne Moore, who's the ex-GF of Clive Owen. And she wants to protect the baby and keep it alive and send it to the what is it?
The Human Project.
The Human Fund.
Yeah.
Money for people. So yeah, they're trying to get it to the Human Fund to protect the baby. She's very noble in her intentions, but she is very quickly dispatched of by, is it Chiwetel Ejiofor?
Yeah, I'm glad you could pronounce it. I wasn't even trying.
I don't know if I pronounced it right, but he is like second in command under her or whatever. It's not clear who's leading it. It's kind of like this anarchist group, right? They're just all anarchists leading it together, I guess.
Yeah.
But he's like, we can't let this baby go because if we can prove that the refugees had a baby, then they have to like be nice to refugees, I guess, is their plan, or they have some kind of plan to use the baby as a political prop for their movement.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, I guess that sort of makes sense. Although we eventually learn that, so I mean these fishes, like these people, they end up assassinating their own leader, Julianne Moore.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't really, like, we as the audience can't really trust them anyway, and our main guy doesn't really trust them. He doesn't trust them either. So his goal, Clive Owen's goal, is to get this woman to the Human Project as Julianne Moore initially wanted, right?
Yeah, and he's kind of a reluctant hero, right? Like he was apparently a activist in his younger years and kind of got out of it and became complacent, while Julianne Moore kind of became more extreme and was like bombing people.
Yeah.
And then he got roped back into it, supposedly just for the money, but then when his ex-wife dies or whatever, and then he sees the baby, he's invested in the cause.
Well, it's interesting because that response, I think, is very true to life. Like because it's their divergence is triggered by the death of their child, right? Mm-hmm. And so he goes into nothing matters,
respiratory illness.
Yeah, a respiratory pandemic, and He despairs and becomes like a nihilist, which is very, sort of typical masculine response to this kind of suffering. But her response is the world is my baby, and all lives matter. Like, we have to save all the refugees. And I think it's an interesting commentary on like the roots of political radicalism among the ladies.
Oh yeah, that they adopt a cause because they're not investing energy in children, so they have to find a cause. Bennett, you mentioned this is sort of like an exaggerated version of the things that might actually happen as a result of plummeting fertility. What might a future of dramatically fewer children actually look like?
Well, what's interesting about it is the people who support this often will be like, "Oh, it'll be so great! It'll be, we'll put less pressure on the planet. We'll have more sort of resources to go around. It'll sort of be like a pressure release. We'll sort of escape this Malthusian trap." But actually, it's the case that like, or they'll say some kind of Marxist thing about like, "Oh, this is the capitalist system is built on infinite economic growth, and that's bad. But eventually, we have to pay the piper and go to a degrowth mindset." But in fact, it's not like sort of a quirk of capitalism that requires this. It's that in order to maintain infrastructure, like every city is like sized for its population, and what you see in like places like Detroit, people in our sphere have particular opinions about exactly why that happened, but like the proximate cause of Detroit's dysfunction is depopulation. Basically, the tax base left. The people who stayed are in large part people who are indigent or too old to leave.
They stayed because they had to.
They stayed because they had to, and they're not as economically productive. They and if you've got a handful of people living on like a city block that's built to house like thousands of people, you still have to run the water through the pipes. You still have to run the electricity through the wires. You still have to maintain pressure in the sewage systems. Like, there's just sort of all of these costs that still have to be incurred just because you left the building standing. And so you can, of course, at immense cost, like bulldoze the city and start over, which is kind of what's happening in Detroit. But that in itself costs money and is enormously disruptive to people's like property rights. And anyway, so huge disruption on that front. And the difference between what we see now and what we're going to see is Detroit has Michigan, most of which is not depopulated and is still, if not for Detroit, fiscally, sound. And then Michigan has the United States, which is a long way away from sort of the kind of collapse that Detroit is facing. So you can always kind of bail Detroit out. But what we're imagining is it's not that people have left. It's that there aren't any young people to sort of pick up the slack anywhere. And so you do have poverty, you have immiseration, you have massive levels of, so in Children of Men, the people that you see are still mostly in like their 40s, 30s, 40s, right? But like there are places in Japan now that it's literally like a guy did a documentary called Birth Gap, where he goes to Japan and he visits some of these cities, and it's like cities where everything's boarded up and it's like 60, 70-year-olds running the shops and taking care of like 80, 90-year-old people. And it's and like routine people throwing themselves off of buildings just out of, because there's nothing to sort of give life meaning. And
Yeah.
And that, I think it's so Children of Men depicts some of the like economic consequences of this, but kind of through this like sort of dumb like Mexican commie lens of like, oh, the problem really is fascism and inequality or whatever. But like the economic consequences will be bad, yes, but I think where this movie really shines is in talking about the psychological consequences.
Yeah.
Of like, this is just the train has stopped. And
So yeah, the movie doesn't really. The movie kind of implies, although I think we to believe this we have to take the words of the British government at face value. But they kind of say the world other than Britain has collapsed, and so we have this refugee crisis, and but it doesn't really get into why, like, why did and I guess maybe it's just what you are describing and they don't bother to describe it, or they themselves didn't really understand it, so they just ignored it. But like, why is the world coming to, like, why did everywhere else collapse? And it's also just a comment on that while I'm there. I don't understand how they are trying to play this fascism thing while also saying this is the last place standing. Well, it seems like the fascism did something.
Well, I think maybe that's sort of the comment. And like, this is basically Malcolm and Simone's take. I don't want to, speak directly for them, but I've heard them say basically like, we are trying to find voluntary solutions to this demographic problem, because if nobody does, then there will be authoritarian solutions. And so it's like, maybe the argument is fascism. I think probably the filmmakers are saying something like, yeah, fascism will work, but it'll work in this horrible way that you'd never want to, that would be not worth the squeeze, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this was like, because like watching it, like it came out in what, 2004?
6, I think.
6? Okay. Oh yeah, 2006, the best year for movies. And yeah, so this was like at the peak of like anti-Bush sentiment too in the world, and like anti-war on terror stuff, which like, it's such a weird period of time to look back on, because like a lot of the like authoritarian critiques of this era just make no sense, because they've kind of now been almost realized from the leftist governments, but it's still portrayed in these movies as like, oh, this Christian authoritarian government is bad, when it's like censoring speech and causing, the downfall of society. But it's like, no, I'm pretty sure it's not that kind of government in charge,
Yeah. So
but yeah,
okay, continue.
that's all.
So I mean, I personally believe that NATALCON is going to right the ship. I think it's gonna pull us out of the nosedive, and we're gonna see birth rates just soaring in the near future. But assuming NATALCON, assuming the libtards intervene and NATALCON is interfered with, and it isn't able to fulfill its mission, how should we behave in a world that's heading this direction?
Okay, well, so I will say, like, I have invited people to the conference who think that it can be reversed. My personal take is that we are going, so at minimum, some of the consequences of demographic decline are baked in, right? Like, no matter what we do at this point, the number of 5-year-olds we have right now is the number of 5-year-olds we're getting. Like, you can't make any more of them. So even if tomorrow you reverse this demographic issue, China is going to have a catastrophically bad time. South Korea is going to have a catastrophically bad time. Italy, Japan. The only sense in which the United States will not have maybe as bad of a time is because we have immigration, but you're sort of number one, you're telling yourself a story that all of these young immigrants from Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala will come here and willingly pay into a system to care for, and I mean pay a lot, like confiscatory levels of taxation to pay for a rich elderly class to whom they have no bonds of loyalty or blood or anything else. And that, I think, is like, besides which, like, they have grandparents back home also, like they have to take care of those old people, and you, and the idea that they're just going to do that willingly and pay into Social Security or whatever for the millennials, I think that's deranged. It would be an immoral thing to expect of them, even if you thought you could convince them to do it. So, setting aside that, all of those countries, Latin America is at replacement fertility right now and declining. Mexico is below replacement. Like, there is not, in fact, an infinite supply of other people's kids. And basically, by the end of this century, you're going to have Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, essentially at replacement fertility, everywhere else below replacement fertility. The trend lines of every single region of the planet are headed in the same direction. They're all headed downward. And the level of poverty at which population decline is not an issue is like $5,000 per person per year. So, like, the only sort of group of people that are reliably reproducing, it's like subsistence farmers in sub-Saharan Africa. And so, so basically, some of that is going to be realized even if we turn the boat around right this minute. And I talked about sort of infrastructure and real estate, but the fact that most so it's one of these poetic ironies of life. The boomers will face essentially no consequences of this. The boomers will do fine. They'll die before any of these consequences are realized. It's basically going to be the millennials, and maybe some of Gen X that get old when Social Security collapses and real estate values across the country are going to do what they did in Detroit. And that for a lot of middle-class people is sort of how they save, right? That's
how like most Americans, that's where most Americans have like their only productive, or their only asset is their house.
Right. Exactly. And that, I'm not going to say like nobody's houses are going to be worth anything, but like a lot of people's houses are going to go to zero, essentially. Unless you're selling,
we'll be able to afford one.
So that's the other side of this. Like there are, and this is one of the things I want to talk about at the conference. Like, there are things that will get easier. Physical capital, physical plant will be easier to come by if you know what to do with it and if you can protect it. But people's savings, the currency, the stock market, all of these things are predicated on steady economic growth, at least positive economic growth. And if that assumption fails, you kind of get a divide by zero effect where a lot of things just go to zero, because there's two ways to grow an economy, right? You can grow an economy by having people be more effective, or you can have more people, right? And we are slowly getting, more productive per worker, but the rate at which the population is declining is there's no way to innovate our way out of that. And, unless you believe in sort of an AI God, end of the world situation. But barring that, we're not going to nose up out of this. And so, how we individually should act, I view it as kind of like a conservation project. Like if you were trying to conserve the African lions on the savannah, they're in these shrinking, isolated pockets of habitat. And if you were sort of king of Africa, what you might do is you might get helicopters together and go pick up those lions and bring them together and create very well protected habitats that are maximally natural for them to live in. And I think a lot of what's happening now is I'll point this out, like when lions or pandas or tigers or orangutans struggle to breed in captivity, we don't accuse them of like having lower moral character than their grandparents did. Like that would be a really stupid accusation to make. And I think the same thing is happening with our generation, with the Zoomers. Like they're sort of being accused of being like a different, just like built different than like their grandparents were. But they are facing radically different incentives. And it's actually the case that still 95% of young Zoomer women want kids. What is happening is people's ability to do that with sort of a reasonable risk profile is being disrupted. And so how should we as individuals act? I think we should be trying to get together with people who care about this issue. We should be getting our kids together. We should be leveraging technology and capital that we have at our disposal to bring our kids together with kids who we'd like them to meet and who we'd like them to be, not just sort of romantic partners, but friends and rivals, and sort of try to rebuild a culture that is robust to these sterilizing memes.
Is there a unique benefit to having a bunch of kids in a world that doesn't have a bunch of kids?
Yeah. I mean, you get to inherit the earth for one thing. You get to be the ones who show up. But I think also people, the institutions that make interactions between strangers low friction are breaking down. Does that make sense? Like the ability to sort of know what you're getting from any given stranger. This is one of the reasons why dating has become so complicated. It's like going to BYU. When I was going to BYU, there were a lot of conversations that you could have very quickly, because you could sort of get to the bottom of like, all right, well, we agree on the basic stuff. So let's talk about sort of the
shared assumptions.
Lot of shared assumptions. And now I think even at BYU, a lot of those shared assumptions have collapsed. And so it's this very high friction, low trust slog to find somebody with whom you can connect. And so, yeah, I think my hope is that my boys and my girls will have this network that is bound by common interest and by blood and by values that will make them much more powerful together than they could be apart.
Yeah, it feels like to me there's going to be less competition in some ways. There's I'll say well-bred, for a well-bred child, there's going to be less competition for maybe ambitious things they want to do.
Certainly at the top.
Taking part in a low friction shared assumption group such as Exit, because I've been participating in that with those group members quite often, and it does just make communication and everything easier, just because you don't have to worry about all that stuff that you would normally, I guess. Like in
Exitgroup.us.
yeah,
Yeah.
Exitgroup.us.
yeah, because I've been doing some like professional things with Exit members, and it's just so much easier than um, normal. So
And
yeah,
the
We're
movie
gonna audiogram that.
yeah,
the movie depicts this too. It shows that to get anything done, to get anything you want, to get any good information, you have to know people. It's like a life during wartime sort of thing. Our main guy, Clive Owen, he's very reliant on the Michael Caine hippie John Lennon character.
and he's got the government insider guy.
Yeah, and that guy, he deals weed to a government employee who gives him information and protection, and we talked about that too. Our government in real life is obviously viewing the social malaise that seems to be growing, and one of their responses is, well, we got to drug these people some more. We got to get them we got to get them the weed. We got to get them drinking as much or more than they were. Got to get them on some prescriptions. And then in this movie, oddly enough, they are, the fascist government is against weed, but I think I doubt that's how it would actually play out. I think they'd want the people on weed, so they're more numb to their decline of standard of living.
Weed guys just they need to be the most oppressed race.
Yeah, they had to write that into the movie.
Yeah, the weed guy portion of the movie was like the worst part of the movie for me. Like them just talking about how great weed is. I'm like,
yeah, I'm always happy to see Michael Caine, but I don't know that I want Michael Caine as like John Lennon weed dealer.
Yeah.
And they even use a John Lennon song at the end of the movie.
I will say, Psy was the only funny moment of the movie. Basically, was show us your Fuji face.
Oh yeah, and Fuji, yeah, that band, the Fugees, they existed well before this, right? That's like that was a known term for refugees,
I guess.
Yeah, but they didn't use a Fuji song, and Lauryn Hill doesn't appear in the film, so that's kind of weird.
A little racist, in my opinion.
Do you guys know why they're burning the cows? They just like can't take care of that many cows or something?
Well, didn't we have like that weird video going around of a bunch of dead cows just being burned, like in real life?
Or was this maybe was this a mad cow thing? They're like having these diseases or something.
Yeah, I think there's like diseases and plagues and all kinds of end time stuff happening. So yeah,
mad cow was, I guess it broke in 2003. We're at the 20-year anniversary of mad cow disease, but so this was 2006. So when they made this, that was on the mind. I guess because part of the movie is like there's widespread unexplained biological oddities occurring, including infertility. That's just one.
Oh, and also it's like some of the countryside seems to be kind of like a war zone, and so potentially people just fled and left their animals too, like, and they're kind of retreating into the cities where there's like terrorist attacks and stuff.
Yeah,
this sort of like retreating and hunkering down, sort of finding defensible borders. That part was really interesting to me.
What did you guys make of like I think it's his cousin or something he goes to visit, who's a government figure? He's like the arts and culture minister or something like that, and he's trying
the Arc of the Arts.
Yeah, what do you guys make of that whole thing with the art guy?
Well, that was my favorite line in the movie. Was what keeps you going? Why do you keep doing all this when everybody's going to die? And his answer was, I just don't think about it, which I think that's exactly, there's something very British about that, in my opinion, like just sort of, this, like everybody maintaining, like, I think the sort of impulse toward fascism that I actually found pretty compelling about in this movie. Like the British impulse toward fascism is not really like right wing. It's because it's not like this like rah, Britain's like racially or like nationally, we're so good. It's like we must maintain good order. We must. It's just sort of like we have to keep everything clean. We have to keep everything in line, and go down with the ship. And like that, it was difficult for me to like make sense of the government's motivations until he said that line. Like I just don't think about it. Like I'm sort of acting on instinct, and that's sort of what I see as what is in fact happening in the UK now. Is they do have this massive immigration problem that is creating all of this chaos and sort of a need for order, and their response to it is sort of to clamp down. Like there's not strategic thinking. There's just this sort of like moment to moment. How do we put out this fire? Well, the guys who are waving the Union Jack at the pro Hamas protest, they're the easiest way to shut everybody up and get everything back to quiet. And so that's who gets arrested. There's not like a values like this is you mentioned when we were sort of pre-gaming this, like it's interesting to see a guy who's an artist and who doesn't have this sense of like the ultimate like meaning of art for its own sake. But like I liked that the arts and culture minister is not like, oh yes, I have this grand vision for like what this art will mean when we're all gone, and I'm gonna like. He was just sort of like, just doing my job, just stiff upper lip, keeping the wheels cranking.
We're supposed to, I mean, the audience is not supposed to like that guy. They cast him as an out of touch elite or something.
Yeah.
Right, like why care about these statues when people are dying outside? And you could be feeding them with the statue money.
Yeah. we could be grinding down this Banksy. There's I don't know if you guys saw that there's a Banksy when he drives up of the two cops kissing. Yeah. That's important British historical art. But yeah, they could be grinding up the concrete from that Banksy and feeding it to the refugees. I don't know if you guys are Pink Floyd fans as well. That whole scene is kind of a Pink Floyd setting. The Battersea Power Station with the floating pig. It's from the album art for Pink Floyd's Animals, which is about Orwell's Animal Farm, which is about fascism. So, not exactly subtle filmmaking.
Yeah, and I do kind of see the communist angle, because it like, is the director saying like, art is just garbage and we really just need to make sure everyone's fed, which like I know BAP has kind of been talking about that recently, about how like the epitome of communist art is like elevator music. It just serves a purpose. Like there's nothing passionate about it. There's no passion. There's no spirit. There's nothing of that. And like for a communist, like the epitome of a communist worldview is that everybody's belly is full and nothing else. And so like there's no higher thing to aspirate towards or to aspire towards. Sorry. And yeah, so it is kind of interesting seeing like a commie director being like, oh yeah, art is just garbage, while he's also making like a meaningful vitalist art piece himself.
Well, but he clearly picked art that he cares about. Like the whole scene takes place in front of Guernica.
Yeah, Guernica.
Guernica.
Yeah.
Which is like the ultimate, like,
Spanish
I'm a
Civil
and I'm
War,
mad.
yeah.
The atrocity of strategic bombing, and So like clearly, and Banksy for heaven's sake, like he clearly like he picked art that he likes, so like it's art that he would
Mm-hmm.
actually theoretically care about. But I think the if he's not making this statement, a more interesting statement is to say that like even art has to be contextualized in terms of like who you want to see it. And I had this. Speaking of BAP, I was reading his book about. He talks about Achilles, and Achilles' sort of radically different view of the meaning of life. That like Achilles is not a like moral hero. Like he's not there for the people. He's there to win glory in this ultimately self-interested way. But like what I see that as it like the word kleos, the word that's used to describe glory, actually means to have your name ring out. It's like to be heard. Um,
Mhm.
it's what people have heard about you. It's the way that like the poets sing about you. And that is an incoherent concept if there is no people to
Mm.
sing about you. And so art for art's sake, you can say like, oh, I don't make art to please people, or I don't make art to like convey a particular message. Like it's when you say art for art's sake, you're saying something about like the purity of the aesthetic sensibility. I wanted to create something beautiful, but like even that is hard to make sense of if you don't want anybody to see it. And uh and so I think what you're confronting in this movie is like, what if there's just nobody to see anything that we're doing? What if because we are social animals. We exist in we don't exist in a vacuum. My cousin actually had this interesting idea for a novel about a guy who like lives on uh, another planet, basically. Like he's been marooned on another planet, and there's no hope for his recovery. Kind of like Man in Interstellar. Uh,
Mhm.
he's sort of on a rock by himself, and he can eat, he can take care of himself, but it's like, what is his motivation to do absolutely anything? Like what? How do you even create a narrative? How do you even tell a story about somebody who lives in complete isolation and will never has no hope of recovery? Like that's sort of the existential question in this movie. Like, what is your life about? And of course, it's like, well, at the end, the sort of escape from that question is, oh, thank goodness we found the baby who is now the only thing any of us care about.
Yeah.
It's actually weird to me the level of anxiety that people in the movie seem to have. And maybe this is the wrong, maybe this is wrong, but my sense is that in this scenario, people wouldn't be showing up to their jobs. I don't know what he does at his job, the main guy, but it doesn't seem very important. I don't know. It doesn't seem like people would do much of anything if there's like literally no like children to worry about or take care of. I mean, there's still like the elderly, I guess, that you want to provide for, but I'm not sure why anyone's doing email jobs anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the productivity of like the level of effort that people bring to their sort of income when they don't have any prospects like that. It's really dramatic. Like if I meet a guy who like I've had conversations with guys in exit, um, where it's like, I'm really trying to get more motivated to perform at my job, and I'll be like, well, do you have wife, kids? No, don't. Do you want more money? It's like, no, not the things I want are cheap. Like I can live on a mattress on the floor. And like, it's not like this, that's all I deserve. It's like literally fine. Like I do not care about a bed frame, basically. And obviously that's a metaphor for the whole thing. But like, and I've had conversations with guys too who are like, oh, I have this project that I got to do and I keep putting it off. And it's like, well, but why do it? Why do it if there's nobody to do it for? And essentially, BAP's escape from that question is that the thing to do with your life is to upend a stultifying system. And that, I think, is like, that's a compelling sort of vision for what a young man might do if he can't raise a family. But even that sort of terminates at, and then we will rebuild a society in which family is possible again. Like, that's it all bottoms out at life really is about other people. And so I think you're right that like people's motivation to like do anything, although again, like we're talking about British people who I view as psychologically alien.
Well, and like largely the city is a mess now, right? Like there's just people on the streets and who knows what, like most people aren't doing anything.
There's
that
tracks.
A core group that are still chugging along.
Yeah. Do you guys see any Christian themes in this movie?
Well, there's the obvious one, right? Of a miraculous birth.
Yeah.
And I think, they even mention it, right? Like she jokes that there was no father and then was like, no, I was actually a hoe. And then,
and she doesn't know who, right?
Right.
A refugee.
Which makes a certain amount of sense. It's a lot of shots on goal.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and she comes from kind of, humble background, no room for her in the inn,
Yeah.
And so there's definitely Christian themes throughout it, but it is kind of like, a subversion or a play on that myth, right? And
I don't think it's a myth, but
no, a myth as
I'm just teasing.
Come on, man. But I do think like one of the things as well is I'm like, how do you watch this movie and be like a hardcore leftist and come away and be like, yes, abortion is good? Because it's a pretty pro-life movie, like just in general. And then I think one of the keys of the movie, and especially like, I saw it when I was a teenager and then kind of rewatching it now after having children and stuff, like it does do a good job of portraying like the miracle that is a child, right? And
right.
Like being the birth scene is like pretty intense, and like it's so like it shows the fragility and yet the resilience and the miracle of this thing that grows inside of a mother and then comes out and lives and is a new life. And not only that, but in this movie, it's literally the hope of the entire future of the world. It rests on this little child. But like, even just a regular birth is almost as miraculous. If you've ever been near one, you would know that. And which is also funny when we talk to like our incel friends and they have no concept of this. It's like, you really are missing out on something here.
Yeah.
And this movie captures that, I think.
Yeah. Well,
go ahead.
I'm struck by just on this the birth narrative, like they don't go with virgin birth, but it is still a miraculous birth. She's on a journey with a man who's not the father, the biological father, but he has volunteered to be the caretaker, basically, at least for the time being. And they're under threat of an evil government.
It is sort of the most communist you could be about that story.
Yeah.
Like it's like what if
Yeah.
what if she was big hoe, and what if she was black, and what are you okay with that? Are you okay with that, Christian?
And
Well,
what
Like,
if she named her baby Froley?
I might
yeah,
have even
it's
seen
kind
this
of
bumper
retarded.
sticker. I think I might have even seen a bumper sticker that it's like, "What if Mary was a refugee?" Like,
Right, yeah, exactly. It's a troll fundamentally. But I
But the myth itself is too strong, right?
right,
Like,
right,
yeah,
right. And I don't know if I don't know how I didn't put this together earlier, but I just realized like it's essentially the same story as Blade Runner 2049.
yeah.
And basically, you know, the miracle of new life, but also and this is where I think it's like it's sort of, you can see how the sort of communist worldview has most effectively eaten the Christian worldview, because a huge theme in both of those movies is like, hey, white guy, you're not who really matters here. Like,
mm,
you're not the main character, and you like you're not the chosen one. She's the chosen one. And like, you need to like step outside yourself and forget yourself and dedicate yourself to something that's not you. And that's like true, right? Like you should dedicate yourself to something that's not you. But it's this sort of casting that out to the widest possible circumference. Like like what if the only baby that mattered was a alien bug on Neptune, and like you should care about that just as much as your own baby. It's like, there's like a dumb way that it's sort of asking you to read that. Um but
It's
like,
funny. Yeah,
go ahead.
it's funny how I mean, if sort of a person who might be considered a racist or something would it might interpret this because they'd see Julianne Moore, Michael Caine, and Clive Owen all dying for they're all like native Britons, white people dying for the refugee. It's very kind of it could be read in a heavy-handed way.
but also, I mean, even that is like, you are dying so that others can live. It's
It's
Right.
yeah,
like they
not
try
saying
to
they're not
subvert, but
noble.
I mean, the real deal is better at subverting, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the again, what's interesting about this movie, like it's forced on them in the movie,
Hmm.
but in our world, it's very clearly a matter of, yeah, and it's not like choice in this really like, hey, you need to man up and like do your job, and because like the choice is harder than it used to be, but like it is not a biological phenomenon, or not primarily biological. It's primarily sociological. And it's sort of people choosing to uh, exit stage left, board the ships for Valinor.
Yeah, in
And
the movie, it's some sort of unknown biological or microplastics or something that's rendered women unable to have children. In our version of that plague is like the $60,000 a year PowerPoint job. Like the allure of like a lower middle class income is too much for
right,
many.
and like it at that level, the daycare math kind of works for one kid, barely works for two kids, certainly doesn't work for three kids. And so you've got this hard cap essentially of two kids that a person in that kind of dual income situation can sustain. And so of course, if that's the top, most people don't have even that many. So you have this fertility band that ends up with an average of about 1.4, 1.3. Obviously overall, and that's that 1.3 children per woman in a lifetime. And obviously, America's overall fertility rate is quite a lot higher than that. I think it's like 1.9-ish, 1.8. But again, the vast majority of that fertility is people who, not to say, America, not to have like a conversation about who really is or isn't an American, but it's people who don't have bonds of loyalty to the country or to the people. And so like it's some other group of people coming to this geography and having babies, and hopefully most of them pay taxes in some measure, but they're not going to pay the kind of taxes that are going to be required to keep the lights on. So it's the email job, the dual income lifestyle is basically incompatible with maintenance of a culture. And I think what has happened essentially is that the work that used to be done of not just sort of like the laundry and the dishes of like housework, but like the work of maintaining bonds between children and inculcating a particular set of values and connecting them with other people in the community that women used to do. That's sort of all of that capital building has just been sort of burned off over the last couple of decades. And people don't even really remember what that was like. And so yeah. And of course there's massive incentives from the corporations and from the government to take all of that like loosey-goosey, illegible, not directly compensated work and commodify it and monetize it and say, instead of doing that, why don't you, earn a paycheck that we can tax and that goes on a corporation's balance sheet, and then you can spend more on eating out, and you can have to live in a more expensive neighborhood so that your kids will be safe because you're not going to be around them. And, there's so much more like taxable, exploitable consumption that happens because we've stopped doing this kind of informal building.
You kind of already addressed it, but like the idea that a lot of people have of the solution to this problem is we just open the floodgates and let in more people, right? And I think you've explained that eventually you run out, but maybe there's enough to save America. I don't know, or like Britain if we care about them. But also, I kind of wanted to point out that even in this movie, which is pro-refugee, the refugees are largely portrayed as like drug addicts, terrorists, murderers, and just kind of gross people. Like,
well, there's a obviously I think the filmmaker's take would be that like that's a consequence of their material conditions. They've been sort of degraded by the way they're being treated.
Okay.
But it's like at a certain point you got to go like, okay, but they still are like that,
Right.
Yeah. This is kind of a random question, but is infertility a deflationary phenomenon? I ask because they offer him like $5,000 to help smuggle the girl, or 5,000 pounds. It's not very much money, and then this is supposed to be 2027. That wasn't even very much when the movie came out.
Well, I will say, people in the U.S. don't understand that the Brit-bongs are actually poorer than Mississippi. Like, over GDP is low in the UK, and so it's like 5,000 pounds isn't a lot of money, but it's probably a lot of money to a low-level government functionary. In this sort of dystopian crash situation, something had to have been done, right? To basically, it's again, it's like the whole message of the movie's attitude toward the state is like, the state will find solutions, but you're not going to like them. and that's kind of
Mhm.
what I see there.
Um, the other faction that we haven't really talked about is they briefly show like the religious people like praying for a solution, and it's kind of like, haha, how silly these people are. But then like there is like a miraculous birth or whatever, and so it's like, I don't know, it's kind of it was a schizophrenic watch for me, and I say this as someone who like really likes the movie, but but because I've been complaining a lot. But it was just funny because it's like, look at these idiots praying for a solution, and then it's like miraculously this person got pregnant.
Well, okay, but I will say there is that monologue about faith versus chance,
Yeah,
and I actually liked the orientation. Well, basically the explanation of what faith is. That essentially faith is a principle of action.
yeah,
That it's what gets you to try, and it's not about passive belief. It's about belief that inspires action. And so you know, maybe there is a sort of own that is a little bit justified in terms of like, is it just sort of yelling at the sky,
right.
versus is it taking action? And maybe the sort of action that he wants taken is like, we have to let in all the refugees and work together to solve this problem. But like that, I mean, he doesn't make a compelling case for that, but maybe that's the case he's trying to make.
Mm-hmm.
It's like sort of this nihilism about like, well, yeah, it's hard to know what he means, because like, is he sort of saying that like, because the fishes, they actually don't care about, they're like
Baby.
not well, not even they don't really even care about what the baby represents. Like
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to take the baby and harvest its stem cells to rejuvenate women's uteruses or something. Like what they want the baby for is as a political symbol to change the way these adult refugees are like treated by the British government.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, it
Or like to
really
cause
is.
an uprising or something.
Yeah. It really is this like nihilistic commie thing of like, let's just take the pie as it is and redistribute it and eat it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll all have full bellies and then we'll all die. And and then the fact that he's depicting those people as the bad guys, it's hard to know exactly what he's saying there.
Yeah.
And the commie sort of worldview is centered on power, and so they have this thing, and they're more interested in what it could mean for power, and versus what it means just for the future of the world.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I was saying it's kind of schizophrenic, because there are those like overt, anti-fascist themes, but then there's this, pro-life, almost, it's pseudo-religious. It's not religious. It's pseudo-religious, like the value of children and stuff like that,
It's
and so it
instinctively
is.
religious.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's an interesting mix of things going on, but I feel like your commie would come in with the surface reading, oh, this is anti-fascist and pro-immigrant,
Yeah.
and maybe
Yeah.
that was the intention of the director, and just by telling the story, though, you end up kind of revealing these deeper themes. But
Yeah. And I mean, if you sort of view Clive and Julianne as sort of the moral fulcrum of the story, which that's the obvious take. I think the case probably ought to be that what he's saying is like, the fascists trying to maintain order at all costs, and the commies trying to
mm-hmm.
create equality at all costs. That's all bullshit. None of it matters. The thing is saving this baby, saving humanity. And so there's this almost like gentle, like we sort of talk about how this movie's dated in a way, and they're sort of their right wing, sort of Bush era hangups don't make a lot of sense. But there's also this like gentle centrist lib heart that you can see in this movie that like has kind of been selected against in the last 10, 15 years. Like basically those people have either gone to one side or the other. They've like decided that what matters is life and vitality and goodness, or they've gone to the dark side and, you know, become just sort of eaters.
Let's talk about the suicide drug in the movie. There's a drug, I think, Quiet Us, which is a very funny name. It's just like quiet these people down, let them kill themselves. What's the parallel you see to our world now? I mean, like, do our leaders do they kind of turn a blind eye when a certain population kills themselves with a certain drug that's become very popular in modern times?
Good question, Grant. I'm glad you asked. Well, I mean, like, yeah, you've definitely got Fent, but you've also got
suicide pods and stuff.
Explicit suicide pods, right? Like that's definitely no longer science fiction, and it's framed as like this very dark, far future. You know, a warning. It's like a warning, but it has arrived. It's here. We're living it, and I think it does speak to. It's the abandonment of searching for meaning. Like all meaning making has collapsed. So like, yes, he depicts the failure of religion, but he's also depicting the failure of this sort of secular rationalist worldview. Like we've been sort of talking about him being this sort of foaming commie, but he's saying some sophisticated things here. Like it's not just that the fundamentalists are sort of impotently shaking their fist at the sky. It's like everybody is dealing with this personal thing, and I wanted to talk about this as well. Like this is not just like I think one way you mentioned like how can an antinatalist or a lib like watch this movie and just walk away from it. One way I think you could do that is to go, well, glad I don't live on planet Children of Men, right? Like this sociological problem just isn't going to happen. It's not my problem. It's not saying anything about like individual life, but really like there are people right now living essentially Clive Owen and Julianne Moore's story in this movie. People who, you know, he on one level he's going through this like sci-fi sort of dystopia thing, but he's also just a guy who lost his kid and it destroyed his marriage, and he can't find meaning because there's no future for him. And that's a real experience. People go through that right now.
You know what I just realized too? This takes us back to the religious themes. I keep calling him Clive Owen because I forgot his character name, but his name's Theo. I don't know if you guys noticed that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Could probably Theodore, loved by God.
Yeah. That's what I was getting at. I didn't realize. I didn't even pick up on that the first time. And then, of course, the girl's name is Key. So you know, what was it that George Lucas said? Jar Jar's the key to all this. Well, she's the key to this one. She's kind of, you could say she's kind of the Jar Jar Binks of this movie.
Oh, so
Jar Jar.
Theodore doesn't mean beloved by God. Theodore means God-given, a gift from God.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
that doesn't seem like a mistake.
no, definitely.
Well, and it's based on a book, and it looks like that's the character's name in the book.
In the
Although
book, though,
the book says the sperm count dropped to 0, which is kind
yeah,
of funny.
in the book, it's men who can't. Which the Children of Men title probably makes more sense.
Mhm.
It's men who can't impregnate women. Like presumably, women in the book can still get pregnant, but
There's no sperm.
yeah, the main guy in the book is just a native British guy. It's not like a refugee or anything like that.
Mm.
And Quaron, he contributed to the screenplay. Like 5 or 6 people did, but he admits he didn't read the book because he wanted to have his take be fresh or something. But
It's shot very well, and it kind of, I feel like it started the trend of the digitally assisted long take.
Mhm.
it certainly feels. I don't mind how it looks, but it certainly does feel very digital.
Yeah, because like that, I think the scene that's been talked about the most is the kind of car chase scene where they are going forward then backwards, and it's all one long shot, and then they do the same thing, kind of the end refugee escapades when like the day after the baby's born
In
it's
the
all
high
one
rise.
shot. Yeah.
I wanted to ask if you guys had thoughts about the animals in the movie.
Hmm.
Is that something that you guys noticed? Because I noticed the first of all, the animals like Theo. All the animals like Theo.
Yes. Yeah.
And I
No, I
saw
didn't pick
that.
up on this.
Well, I saw that as you'll be in league with the stones of the field, like that's sort of his way of saying like God is on his side. The biology, the nature, the things that still work are sort of with him. And like the dogs, when they're being chased, the dogs run alongside them, run with them away from the fish.
Right. They say it explicitly. He's like, "Oh, this dog never likes anyone." But then,
Right,
like,
right, right,
yeah,
right.
there's other scenes just where like animals come up to him and he kind of pushes them away and stuff. Yeah.
Why not make a machine that sucks 8 titties?
Yeah, yeah, and that's another. Yeah, it's another one of those religious things where her reveal of pregnancy is in a barn, and
Yes.
it starts playing holy music, and she does what's the pose? Botticelli, Birth of Venus pose. Like,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, why don't they invent that machine?
This kind of reminds me of like all the conversations I had on my mission with like hardcore atheists who like when you got past like the bravado and everything, it just revealed like a deep hurt that had happened around religion, whether it was a parent or a religious leader that had somehow hurt them in their younger years, and they're just kind of, they hate God. It's not that they don't believe in him, they just hate him.
Yeah, yeah. I just covered Fight Club. There's a line. What if you realize God's real, but he doesn't like you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then you become a Calvinist. God doesn't like anybody.
Yeah. I'm just going through my notes. I don't really have anything important really left, just like small things. For example, Charlie Hunnam is in this movie, which I didn't realize.
Who is he?
He's the goofy guy with the dreadlocks who tries to shoot them. He chases them down when they escape.
I didn't catch that one.
Yeah,
wow.
I didn't realize it was him until I was looking at the credits.
Oh, wasn't Zazie Beetz in this? Oh, never mind. I thought she was in it for a second.
The woman, I checked, the woman who plays the mother, she doesn't really, she's had a career, but nothing I had heard of really.
Do we know how much of her voice and affect is an accent or just her?
She's just your typical Londoner, I think. But meaning she's from Africa or something. Yeah. I don't
know. One of the things that I noticed was the sort of crassness of, and I think this was intentional, particularly when they're in the car together. There was this sort of crassness of this totally adult life where there's nobody to be a grown-up for.
Right.
Everyone kind of has this sort of adolescent irreverence about everything. There's no, and this is something that I've noticed with, just being in environments where nobody has any kids. Like there is this like,
Mm-hmm.
they haven't made a transition. They haven't,
Matured.
yeah, it's Drew. When we did the natalism podcast for the Exit podcast, we talked about having kids as being sort of like a second puberty, like
Hmm.
in the sense that it sort of rewires your brain in a way that you can't explain to somebody who hasn't gone through it yet, and how many like psychological loops it closes, and you can see the characters, and I actually don't know if this was intentional or if this is just sort of it's a world, actors, Hollywood, where like lots of people just don't have kids, but the sense of arrested development seemed very clear,
Well,
seemed
there's
intentional.
I thought it was funny how, all of the grown up characters who do see the baby, are shocked, and they're supposed to act shocked because in this world there's no babies. But it reminds me, people now, it's
Mm.
not too different from the way people act now. If you have a baby in an unfamiliar setting, they're like, a baby, what? And they usually like the baby. It's just initially they are like they
Yeah.
don't. They're just so uncomfortable, or not necessarily uncomfortable, but unfamiliar with babies.
Yeah, I was gonna say the feasibility of this and like the reality of it is like I've been complaining about it a lot because I have kids and I'm constantly looking for like activities where people don't mind if kids go a little nuts, because that's what happens with kids sometimes. And like there used to be a lot of those when I was a kid. There were all these themed restaurants where it's like go be an idiot kid and there's pirates and stuff. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
like those are all gone now, and I mean maybe they're of poor taste or whatever, but like nowadays, like even the zoo has a roars and pours night. So it's beer, uh come drink beer at the zoo because there's no kids to go to it anymore. Like, and I've
Yeah.
been to the zoo and it's like people have one kid maybe, and like half the people have no kids, and it's like there's going to be this whole new well, and it's already being built. Like there's everything is being catered towards boomers as like,
Yeah.
come here and spend your money here, and it's all expensive. There's no like cheap kid activities. Like it's all like, oh, you're old and retired, come spend your money at this dainty activity where no kids will ever bug you. And it's like, I lived across the street from an olive mill, and they had like a restaurant attached to it, and it was a great place for kids because you could eat outside. But then we'd go there and we'd be the only people with kids. It's just old people, and like it's kind of cost prohibitive for like other families to go there too. So it's just like, yeah, I hate that like the world is becoming catered to like old people with wealth who don't want disturbances.
I thought you were going to say you lived across from an Olive Garden.
Yeah, it was an Olive Garden.
There's network effects at play here.
Hmm.
When if you're the only one having kids, it's very like, so I mean, we love our neighbors where we live, but the median age is like 55,
Hmm.
and nobody has any kids, and it's very isolating. And I think you do see, what we're going to see that's different from this is like in this movie, it's like nobody has any kids. And what we're going to see is like a couple of people have kids.
Right.
And
Well,
what's cool about
let me
that is
see.
like, I do think the boomers, the sort of accusation of self-absorption is valid, but, you do find that like a lot of them really do enjoy, uh, being involved in other people's kids and sort of showing them things and teaching them things. And like, especially, so we're in a rural area, and people being willing to like, here's how you work on a car. Here's how you cut up a Thanksgiving turkey, or like just sort of lots of that like boomer knowledge. You can in fact capture. They're excited to tell you about it. And I think, to some extent, basically the real consequences of what we're talking about for us is going to be when we're the boomers, right?
Yeah.
When we're retiring. And I think we are going to see, I mean, you're going to see a lot of like freakouts, right? Like a lot of millennial women are already sort of freaking out. But I think you will also see a lot of those people try to turn that pain into some meaning by, being involved in other people's kids, and that for good and bad, right? Like it's sort of the world is my baby, sort of invasive political goofery, but also, just sort of wanting to help, wanting to catch some of that baby glow,
Yeah, one thing I was thinking about, in a group of people who are acutely aware of the trends, is like the parks and hospitality division at Disney, who is like having to figure out how to keep the parks relevant when it's like the only people with enough money to go there are like millennials who want to go without kids.
But now it prices out kids. That's the most annoying thing about
the zoo thing. It's like when I was at a Disney thing a couple years ago, and it's like, you see a lot of indications that they're like targeting things toward 35 and 40-year-olds now. It's
middle-aged gays. That's
we can wrap it up there. I know some of us have to get back to our day jobs. But last thing, everyone go sign up for the Natal conference. Anyone, any last things that anyone needs to push or say?
Yeah, come to the conference. It's gonna be really interesting. We're gonna be working on some cool projects.
Yeah, it does seem cool. It seems like I'm having FOMO at the fact that I will not be able to go, but it seems pretty cool.
Natalism.org.
All right, yeah, I'll put all the links and stuff. And as always, like, subscribe, share, send this to someone who needs it, I guess. anyone who needs some inspiration in their inbox today.
Oh, I have one last thing. Would Zoomers like this movie?
Maybe. I mean,
yeah,
it has kind of the look. This sort of digital mid-2000s digital movie sort of is kind of the blueprint for a lot of Netflix trash. It's better than Netflix.
Yeah, the CGI
trash,
baby is annoying. They should have had a real baby.
I thought the CGI baby looked surprisingly good, though.
It did for the time, but still, it looked CGI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see them being okay with this movie, a Zoomer. They wouldn't. I don't know how closely they would, watch it, but
it's quick. I mean, you could sort of get through a couple of like Twitch streams on your tablet while you're watching it. If
you had Subway Surfer up, you'd enjoy it.
Dystopianism has remained pretty popular.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's been vindicated in a lot of respects. I mean, like a lot of it holds up.
Well, yeah, that my last thing is maybe like a lot of it is like not science fiction. It's just like a slight exaggeration.
Yeah. When I prepare for these, I listen to like other podcasts or videos or something about it, and a lot of people who watch it are really taken. They're like, wow, and just like 15 years later would be in Trump's America, or 10 years later would be in Trump's America, just like this movie. Kids in cages, German women in cages.
Mm-hmm.
So true.
Did you guys pick up on that? There's a lady speaking German in a cage. It's like, oh, come on.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's pretty explicit, the Holocaust stuff. But yeah.
Anyway, that's the last for me.
Thanks,
Right.
guys. Good to be here.
Talk to you guys later.